Sometimes, what heals us isn't a big smile, but a stranger who smiles at us when we're at our weakest. In a rainy street corner, she found something unexpected. A small kindness, but enough to warm a weary heart. The first drop of rain landed on the pavement with a soft yet ominous tap, a warning of the downpour that was moments away. Isabella Rowan stood beneath a flickering streetlight, her breath shaky, her pulse too loud for comfort. She rummaged through her handbag for the fifth time, hands trembling with frustration. Lip balm, business card holder, silver pen, tablet, no wallet. Her phone screen remained dark, no matter how many times she pressed the power button. Dead. Of all days, why today? Isabella closed her eyes and inhaled sharply. As the newly appointed CEO of Rowan Tech, a multi-billion-dollar empire she inherited only 6 months ago, she was used to maintaining control, precision, and composure. But fate had chosen today, right after an exhausting 3-hour investor negotiation, to play a joke on her. She was stranded at a bus stop in the poorest corner of the city, wearing a tailored ivory coat worth more than the annual rent of some apartments nearby, and with absolutely no way to get home. "How lovely," she muttered, lifting her eyes toward the sky just as thunder rumbled in response. A few feet away, leaning casually against the rusted frame of the bus shelter, a man watched her with quiet curiosity. His clothes were simple: faded cargo pants, a dark t-shirt, and a gray jacket with fraying seams. His hair was a tousled chestnut brown, his eyes a striking green, warm despite the cold drizzle. There was nothing particularly intimidating about him, except for the way he observed her so attentively, as though he could see through the expensive coat into the anxious heartbeat hidden beneath. He shifted his weight, hesitating for a moment before stepping closer. "Rough night?" he asked, his voice deep and smooth, carrying an unexpected gentleness. Isabella stiffened, startled. Strangers rarely approached her, and when they did, the interaction was usually transactional, calculated. This man felt different, normal, real. She swallowed her pride. "I lost my wallet." He nodded as if that explained everything. "And your phone?" "Dead," she admitted. "Ah." He glanced at the dark sky. "And the storm's not going to be kind." A faint smile tugged at his lips. "Looks like the universe is giving you a full challenge tonight." Isabella almost laughed. "Almost. Seems so." He paused, pulling his hand into his pocket. "How much is the fare?" Her brows knit together. "Wait, you don't... I can't ask you to. You didn't ask." The man shrugged. "And it's just a bus ticket. No big deal." Before she could protest, he pressed a few bills and coins into her palm. His fingers were warm, roughened from labor, a stark contrast to her manicured hands. Isabella stared at the money. People didn't help her, not without wanting something. "What's your name?" she whispered. "Elias." He offered a small, almost shy smile. "Elias Hart." "Isabella," she replied softly. "Nice to meet you, Isabella, who lost her wallet." His teasing tone was light but respectful, and it disarmed her more than she expected. The bus rumbled toward the station, headlights cutting through the rain. "I will pay you back," she insisted. Elias chuckled. "No need. Just pay it forward someday." Pay it forward. There it was again, proof that he wasn't expecting anything. That simple kindness, free from calculation or motive, lodged itself somewhere deep in her chest. As the bus doors opened, she hesitated. Looking at him through the rising storm, the dim streetlight gleaming on his wet jacket, she felt something shift. An unfamiliar warmth blooming in a life usually ruled by cold logic. "Thank you," she said, truly meaning it. Elias gave a small salute with 2 fingers. "Safe trip home." The door shut with a hiss, sealing her inside. Isabella pressed her hand against the window just as the bus pulled away. Through the rain-splattered glass, She watched Elias standing there, hands in pockets, shoulders relaxed, eyes following her only until the bus disappeared around the corner. He didn't know. He didn't know she was Isabella Rowan, the CEO of the very company whose headquarters towered over this city. A woman worth more money than he could imagine. Someone accustomed to being admired or feared, not helped without expectation. As the bus rolled deeper into the night, Isabella let herself exhale. For the first time in a long time, she felt small, human, grounded. And strangely, she didn't mind. She touched the money he had given her, feeling the warmth lingering on the crumpled edges, and something within her whispered that this moment, this stranger, would not leave her mind any time soon. Little did she know, fate had only just begun weaving their story. The next morning, the city glimmered beneath a pale gold sunrise, but Isabella Rowan felt none of its warmth. She sat in her glass-walled corner office, stories above the world, yet her thoughts were nowhere near the spreadsheets glowing on her screen. They were at a bus stop, standing in the rain, wearing frayed clothing and a quiet smile. Elias. She pressed her fingertips lightly against her temple. Why was she thinking about him? One evening, one act of kindness, and suddenly he occupied every loose corner of her mind. "Miss Rowan," her assistant's voice crackled through the intercom. "The division heads are ready in the conference room." "On my way," Isabella replied, smoothing her blazer and trying to steady the fragments of her thoughts. The conference room hummed with the usual tension, executives shuffling papers, the scent of roasted coffee mingling with the sharp tang of anxiety. As soon as Isabella entered, conversations quieted, eyes sharpened. She was used to that. The room always inhaled when she walked in. She took her place at the head of the sleek obsidian table. Just as she opened her laptop, someone caught her eye near the far wall. A man in dark navy work overalls knelt beside an open control panel, a toolbox beside him, wires sprawled like tangled vines. He tightened a screw, then shifted his position, brushing a damp strand of hair from his forehead. Isabella froze. "Elias?" Her heartbeat thudded loudly in her ears. It couldn't be. But then he lifted his head, and there he was, Elias Hart, looking up with those unmistakable green eyes. He didn't smile. He didn't gasp. He didn't look remotely stunned. He simply nodded politely, the kind of nod he might give any executive in the building, then returned to fixing the panel. He didn't recognize her. Isabella felt the air drain from her lungs. Of course he wouldn't. Last night she wore her cashmere coat, no makeup, soaked in rain beneath a dim streetlight. Today she was in a powerful white blazer, immaculate hair, and the aura of someone who controlled empires. To Elias, she was just another high-ranking suit in a building full of them. For the rest of the meeting, Isabella barely heard a word the executives presented. Her mind replayed the moment over and over, his calm nod, his indifferent focus. And beneath her confusion was a flicker of something she didn't want to acknowledge. Disappointment. When the meeting ended and the room emptied, Elias closed his toolbox and stood. Isabella remained seated, watching him with a mixture of curiosity and nerves she didn't understand. Finally, she forced herself to speak. "Excuse me." Elias paused mid-step, turning toward her. "Yes, ma'am." The word "ma'am" hit her like a splash of ice water. She swallowed the strange sting in her chest. "What's your name?" she asked, though she already knew it. He hesitated, cautious. "Elias Hart." She nodded as if hearing it for the first time. "How long have you worked here, Mr. Hart?" "Almost a year." He shifted grip on his toolkit, posture straightening as though prepared for reprimand. "Maintenance department. Maintenance. Of course." That explained the overalls, the tools, the quiet resignation in his posture. A man who blended into the background, working behind walls and beneath ceilings, most executives never noticed. But Isabella noticed him. "Very well," she said softly. "I'll see you around." Elias gave another respectful nod before turning away, disappearing down the hall. As he left, A small, uncontrollable smile tugged at the corner of her lips. How strange, how impossible, how utterly unexpected. Over the following days, something changed. No, something awakened in Isabella. Every time she walked through the building, her gaze drifted unconsciously towards maintenance areas. She found herself taking longer routes to her office, lingering near stairwells, drifting past storage floors she normally ignored. She told herself it was coincidence. It wasn't. Sometimes she caught glimpses of him, high on a ladder, repairing a light, crouched beneath a vent panel, carrying heavy coils of wiring across the hall. He always seemed focused, efficient, almost invisible. But never to her. Her heart reacted before her mind could reason with it. Curiosity, warmth, something deeper she refused to name. One afternoon, she stood in her office, glaring at the thermostat. "Not again," she muttered. The display blinked inconsistently, the temperature changing on its own. She pressed a few buttons. Nothing. Right on cue, a voice spoke from the doorway. "Is it the thermostat or is it operator error?" She spun around. Elias leaned against her door frame, arms crossed, a teasing brow raised. A hint of a smile ghosted his lips. "I know how to use a thermostat," she said, feigning offense. He stepped into the room, effortlessly resetting the system with a few swift movements. "There," he said. "Crisis averted." Isabella crossed her arms. "Should I add your number to my emergency contacts?" He smirked. "Only if you promise not to break anything on purpose." She laughed, a real, unguarded laugh, and for a moment the distance between CEO and maintenance worker dissolved, replaced by something startlingly simple. Human, warm, connected. But something else lingered beneath the surface too, a faint, unspoken pull neither dared acknowledge yet. Little did they know, this was only the beginning. The weeks that followed unfolded slowly, like pages turning in a book Isabella didn't remember opening. Every day brought small interactions, brief, ordinary moments that somehow felt extraordinary in their simplicity. A shared smile in the hallway, a teasing remark when he passed her office, a moment of accidental eye contact that lingered a little too long. It was subtle, delicate, like a fragile thread forming between two worlds that were never meant to touch. And yet, they did. Isabella learned things about Elias bit by bit. He didn't talk much about himself, not out of secrecy, but out of humility. He mentioned working 2 jobs, fixing machines in the evenings, helping his younger brother with school. He'd once wanted to study engineering, but never had the chance. He never complained. He simply kept going. Isabella admired him for that. Admired him more than she should. But she never revealed who she was. Not fully. He knew she worked in the upper floors, but he didn't know she led the entire building. CEO was not printed on her forehead, and at first she didn't correct his assumptions. Then, as time passed, the truth grew heavier. Harder to say, harder to explain, and she feared his reaction, feared changing the fragile, growing warmth between them. She told herself she would tell him soon, but soon kept slipping away. One evening, the office was nearly empty, the sky outside an inky blue framed by city lights. Isabella walked through the lobby, her heels tapping softly against the polished floor. As she rounded a corner, she noticed Elias outside near the loading area, speaking with a man in a dark suit. The car that pulled up beside them was sleek and expensive, too expensive for any ordinary visitor. Elias watched silently as the man opened the back door for Isabella. Because the man was her driver, Isabella climbed into the vehicle with automatic familiarity, unaware of Elias's eyes lingering on her until the car disappeared into traffic. For the first time since they'd met, a cold pit formed in his stomach. Something wasn't adding up. The next day, as Elias repaired a jammed vending machine in the break room, 2 employees nearby chatted loudly, oblivious to his presence. "Did you watch the new interview?" one said. "She's terrifyingly brilliant." The CEO, Isabella Rowan. Of course, running Rowan Tech at her age? Insane. Elias froze. His hands stilled, his breath caught. CEO. The words echoed in his mind like a strike of lightning. Isabella. Isabella Rowan, the woman from the bus stop. The woman who laughed with him, sought him out, teased him, looked at him like... His jaw tightened. She was the CEO, a billionaire, a public figure. A woman who lived in penthouses, attended galas, signed contracts worth more than he would earn in a lifetime. And she hadn't told him. The machine beeped as he tightened the last screw, but he barely registered the sound. His world, quiet, predictable, modest, tilted sharply beneath him. She had let him talk to her as if she were a regular employee. Let him tease her. Let him walk around thinking they lived in the same universe. His chest burned with something he didn't want to name. Hurt, confusion, a small bitter sting of humiliation. Had she been laughing at him behind that composed smile? He didn't know. But the next time he saw her, everything was different. They crossed paths in the hallway later that day. Isabella looked up, expecting that familiar warmth, but Elias's eyes slid past hers, cold and distant. Her steps faltered. "Elias, is something wrong?" "No," he said curtly. The word hit her like a shove. He didn't meet her eyes, didn't smile, didn't linger. He nodded stiffly and walked away. Isabella stood frozen in the hallway, confusion swirling into a knot of dread. The next day, and the day after that, it continued. Brief nods, clipped replies, quick exits, no jokes, no warmth, no Elias. Each interaction was a door slammed quietly in her face. At first, Isabella tried to rationalize it. Maybe he was tired, maybe stressed, maybe something was wrong in his personal life. But the truth came crashing down one evening when she found him alone on the maintenance floor, sleeves rolled up, sweat clinging to his forehead as he worked on an overheating AC unit. "Elias," she said softly. He didn't turn around. She stepped closer. "Please talk to me." The wrench in his hand tightened. Why? CEO Rowan doesn't need to talk to the maintenance guy. The words struck her like a physical blow. Isabella froze. He didn't turn, but his voice held an edge she had never heard from him before. Cold, defensive, wounded. "You knew," he continued, "that I didn't know who you were. And you let me embarrass myself anyway." "I never," her voice cracked. "Elias, I never once..." "You let me talk to you like equals." He finally looked at her, eyes darker than she'd ever seen. "We're not equal, Isabella. Not even close." Her heart clenched painfully. "That's not true," she whispered. "Isn't it?" he asked quietly. She didn't know how to answer. He looked away first. "You belong in a world I'll never touch. I don't know why you pretended otherwise." Then he picked up his toolbox and walked past her without glancing back. Each step he took felt like a door closing. And when he disappeared around the corner, Isabella was left standing alone, surrounded by humming machines and the heavy ache of everything she hadn't said soon enough. Everything began to fall apart. The rest of the week felt unbearably heavy. Wherever Isabella walked, the building seemed colder. The halls seemed longer. The air seemed thinner, or maybe it was simply because she no longer saw Elias anywhere. Not the version she knew, not the warm smile, not the quiet teasing. He was there physically, yes. Repairing vents, checking electrical panels, carrying coils of cable. But emotionally, he was gone. Pulled back into a world she could no longer reach. And every time he passed her without meeting her eyes, the ache in Isabella's chest deepened. She wanted to explain. She wanted to tell him she never lied, only hesitated, afraid of losing the rare, fragile connection they had formed. But each attempt ended before it began. When she approached him, he walked away. When she called his name, he pretended not to hear. When their eyes accidentally met, he looked anywhere but at her. Until finally, after 3 days of silence and hurt, Isabella could no longer endure the weight pressing against her heart. She went to find him. It was late evening, most of the employees already gone. The building was unusually quiet, the hum of air vents echoing through the deserted floors. She headed to level B2, where maintenance teams usually worked after hours. As soon as she stepped inside, the heat hit her like a wave. The AC system on that level was malfunctioning again. Metal pipes radiated warmth. A faint clatter echoed from the back of the room. There he was. Elias knelt beside a massive AC panel, shirt damp with sweat, strands of hair sticking to his forehead. His jaw was clenched, his movements sharp, frustration radiating from him in waves. He was working as if the machine had personally wronged him. For a moment, Isabella simply watched him, saw the exhaustion in his shoulders, the strength in his arms, the stubborn determination etched into his expression. His world was grueling, heavy, full of responsibility, and she had accidentally become another weight for him to carry. She stepped forward quietly. "Need a hand?" Elias stilled. Slowly, he turned his head toward her. His green eyes were darker than usual. Tired, conflicted, guarded. "What are you doing down here?" he asked, voice low. "I came to talk to you. There's nothing to talk about." "There's everything to talk about," Isabella said softly. He straightened, wiping his hands on his jeans. "Look, Miss Rowan." Isabella flinched. Miss Rowan. Formal, cold, distant. He had never used that tone with her before. "I'm still the same person, Elias," she whispered. "No," he replied, shaking his head. "You're not." She stepped closer. "Please, listen." "You should have told me," he interrupted sharply. "I wanted to," she insisted, "but every time I tried, it just felt harder. I didn't want to change how you looked at me." "How I looked at you?" Elias laughed, but the sound was empty, hollow. "Isabella, I liked you. I trusted you. And now I feel like an idiot who never realized he was talking to a billionaire with a driver and a private elevator. That's not who I am." "That is exactly who you are," he snapped. The words hit her harder than she expected, but she steadied her breath. "You think I care about money?" she whispered. "I think you don't understand how different our lives are," he said quietly, voice roughening. "You'll never know what it's like to choose between rent and groceries. You'll never worry about your brother's school fees or your mother's medical bills. You walk through this world with doors already open. I spend my life trying to pry them open." His chest rose and fell with the weight of the confession. Isabella's heart broke for him, for the pain he carried, for how deeply he believed he wasn't enough. She reached out, gently touching his forearm. "Elias, I don't care about any of that." He closed his eyes as if the words hurt him. "You should." "Why?" "Because," he whispered, voice trembling, "we belong to two different worlds." Isabella felt something inside her fracture. "No," she breathed. "Elias, please." But he stepped away from her touch. "I can't be the guy," he said slowly, painfully, "who stands next to a woman like you and feels like a footnote in her story. You're not... You don't get it," he cut in, eyes burned with conflict. "I need to stand on my own. I need to build something real before I could ever be someone worthy of you." "Worthy?" she echoed, voice cracking. His silence was answer enough. And then he walked past her. No anger, no shouting, just quiet heartbreak, the kind that hurt more than anything else. "Elias," she whispered, voice trembling, "don't walk away." His footsteps echoed, fading with every step. He didn't look back. Left alone in the suffocating heat, Isabella pressed a shaking hand to her chest. For the first time in years, maybe ever, she felt powerless. The woman who commanded boardrooms, steered corporations, and controlled futures could not stop one man from walking away. The world kept humming mechanically around her, and Isabella Rowan stood in the dim, overheated basement, feeling the sharp, painful reality settle in her heart. She had lost him. Elias thought distance would help. He believed that once he stepped away, once he reminded himself of the line between her world and his, everything inside him would quiet down. The confusion, the longing, the shame, the foolish hope. He was wrong. Because the moment Isabella stopped trying, the moment her bright presence disappeared from his days, the silence became unbearable. Every morning, he walked into the building and instinctively looked for her without meaning to. He scanned the hallways, paused near her office floor, lingered in places where they once exchanged small, effortless smiles. But she was gone. Not literally. She was still CEO, still working tirelessly in her glass tower, but she no longer crossed his path, no longer paused in the hallway, no longer met his eyes. And that absence echoed louder than her presence ever had. Elias found himself replaying every moment they shared. The warmth in her laugh, the softness in her voice when she said his name, the way she watched him when she thought he wasn't looking. None of it felt fake. None of it felt like manipulation. She had looked at him like a person, not a project, not a stray to be rescued, not a joke. He had been so afraid of being less that he never considered the possibility she had never seen him that way. One afternoon, as he made his way through the main lobby, he spotted her for the first time in days. Isabella stood near the entrance, speaking to a tall, well-dressed man in a charcoal suit. The man leaned close to her, laughing gently at something she'd said. She smiled back, polite, composed, elegant. Elias felt something twist painfully inside him. He froze. She looked happy, or at least trying to be. He shouldn't stare. He shouldn't care. He had been the one to walk away, but the sight of another man standing so close to her sent a quiet, sharp ache through his chest. An ache he didn't know how to name. She deserves someone like him, Elias thought bitterly. Someone who fits her world. Isabella glanced up at that exact moment. Their eyes met across the lobby. For a split second, just one, her expression faltered. The smile faded. Something soft, almost fragile, flickered in her eyes. Then she looked back at the man beside her. Elias dropped his gaze. He turned around and walked out before she could see the pain burning across his face. But the ache followed him, everywhere. He tried distracting himself, work, friends, repairs, anything, but nothing filled the hollow weight inside him. Nothing muted the memories of her. Until one night, after another fruitless attempt at sleep, the truth struck him with a clarity that nearly knocked the breath from his lungs. She had never been the problem. He was. He had pushed her away. He had thrown her kindness back at her. He had treated her feelings as illusions, her sincerity as something too good to be true. She never once made him feel inferior. He did that all on his own. He had been the one who wasn't ready, too afraid of what it meant to be seen by someone like her. Too convinced he wasn't enough before she could decide that for herself. And now, he'd lost her. Unless he changed that outcome. The realization settled deep in his chest. If he truly cared for Isabella, then running away was the last thing he should have done. He needed to fight, not for status, not for wealth, but for himself. For the man he wanted to become. For the man worthy not of her world, but of her heart. And so, for the first time in years, Elias made a decision fueled not by fear, but by purpose. The next few months were the hardest of his life. Elias enrolled in online engineering and business courses, studying late into the night after long shifts. He cut back on social outings, saved every cent he could, pushed himself until exhaustion blurred the edges of his vision. But he kept going. Whenever he wanted to quit, he remembered her voice, her laugh, her tears when he walked away. The way she whispered his name like it mattered. And above all, he remembered how it felt to hold her heart carelessly in his hands. He refused to ever be that man again. Little by little, progress came. His skills grew, his confidence sharpened, and slowly, opportunities began to open, ones he created himself, not ones handed to him. Within a year, Elias launched a small but promising tech maintenance startup. Nothing huge, nothing glamorous, but it was his, built with sweat, built with grit, built with intention. And when he stood in his modest office one late evening, holding the envelope he had prepared for Isabella, he felt something he hadn't felt in a long time. Hope. Inside the envelope was a bus ticket. A simple one, like the ticket he once gave her in the rain. Except this time, it wasn't meant to send her home. It was meant to bring her back. He slipped in a note, written in careful, trembling handwriting. "I've changed, but one thing hasn't. I still love you. Elias." Then, with a deep breath and a pounding heart, he sent it. Miles away, high in her penthouse office, Isabella Rowan almost dropped her tablet when she opened the mysterious envelope delivered to her desk. A bus ticket, a note, a familiar handwriting. Her breath hitched. Her heart raced. This wasn't just an invitation. It was a promise. And before she could second-guess herself, before doubt could stop her, she grabbed her coat and ran. The city was alive with evening rush-hour energy. Cars honking, neon lights flickering to life, crowds weaving through sidewalks with the restless pulse of urban chaos. But Isabella heard none of it. Her heartbeat drowned out everything. Clutching the bus ticket and the small handwritten note tight against her chest, she ran through the streets like someone chasing the last train home. It didn't matter that her heels were too high or that her perfectly tailored coat whipped violently in the wind. All she knew was one thing. Elias wanted her to come, and she would not lose him again. She turned the final corner and stopped. There he was, standing at the exact same bus stop where their worlds had first collided in the rain. The flickering streetlight above him cast a soft halo over his figure. He wore a simple jacket, hands tucked in the pockets, eyes scanning the street with a mixture of hope and nerves he couldn't quite hide. He looked older somehow, more confident, more sure of himself, but when he smiled, it was the same. Warm, disarming. Elias. For a moment, Isabella couldn't move. Her breath lodged in her throat, her heart twisting in a painful, beautiful way. Then she stepped forward. Then she walked faster. Then she ran. And when she collided into his arms, he caught her effortlessly, holding her as though letting go again would be impossible, unthinkable. Her breath trembled against his neck. His fingers curled into the back of her coat. The world around them blurred into insignificance. Only they existed. Only this moment existed. When Isabella finally pulled back, her eyes glistened, not weakly, but with the full force of everything she'd carried in silence. "You took long enough," she whispered, voice cracking with emotion. Elias laughed softly, brushing a strand of hair from her cheek. "I told you. I don't give up easily." She hit his chest lightly, smiling through tears. "Don't disappear like that ever again." "I won't," he promised. "Not this time." They stood close, breaths mingling in the cool air. The memory of their pain dissolving into the warmth that surrounded them now. Isabella traced the edge of the bus ticket in her pocket and looked up at him. "Why this place?" she asked gently. Elias looked around. The worn cement ground, the old bench, the stubborn streetlight that would not fully die. "This is where it all started," he said softly. "The night I met you. I didn't know your name, not your job, not your world. I just saw someone who needed help." His voice dropped, and that was the moment everything in my life changed. Even if I didn't realize it, her heart swelled. "And later," he continued, "this became the place I walked by when I missed you, when I regretted everything I said, everything I didn't say." The vulnerability in his eyes struck her with surprising force. "Elias," she murmured, reaching for his hand. He took hers instantly. "But I didn't want to come back to you with excuses or insecurities," he said firmly. "I wanted to come back as the man I chose to become, not the man fear turned me into." Isabella felt her throat tighten. "You never had to prove anything to me." "Maybe not," he said softly. "But I had to prove something to myself." He gently pressed her hand to his chest, where his heartbeat raced beneath her palm. "I needed to know I wasn't standing beside you as someone you felt sorry for, but as someone who could stand proudly beside you." Her breath caught. "So," she whispered, "are you ready to stand with me now?" Elias smiled. A real one. Full, unrestrained, filled with everything he had held back for far too long. "More than ready." She inhaled shakily, emotion rushing through her like a wave she couldn't stop even if she tried. "I still love you," Elias said quietly, truth spilling out like a confession he had waited a lifetime to speak. Isabella let out a trembling laugh. Good, because I never stopped. For a moment, neither of them moved. The lights of the city glowed around them. Cars rushed past. Distant voices echoed, but their little corner of the world felt impossibly still. Then Isabella rose on her toes, and Elias bent down. Their lips met, not with desperation, but with the certainty of two people who had walked through storms, misunderstandings, heartbreak, growth, and still found their way back. A kiss soft at first, then deeper, then full of everything they'd held inside. When they finally broke apart, Elias pressed his forehead gently against hers. This time, he whispered, there are no worlds between us. No, she breathed, smiling. Not anymore. Hand in hand, they stepped away from the bus stop, not as CEO and maintenance worker, not as two people divided by circumstance, but as equals, as partners, as two hearts that had always spoken the same language. The city moved around them, but for Isabella and Elias, everything had finally fallen into place, and love, simple, stubborn, powerful love, had found its way.